Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Yanina Dore, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you. Hello, wine friends, and welcome back to another episode. For the first time on this podcast, I am not sitting down with a master of wine, a winemaker, or a sommelier, but with a wine lover who's taken the online wine world by storm. I am talking about Liam Darcy, better known as the Wine Wally on Instagram. Now, for those of you who, like Liam, are simply passionate about wine, I hope this episode sparks some inspiration. And for my listeners deep in WSET studies, do not worry, do not fear. There's still plenty of geeky wine knowledge packed in too. So Liam's grown a community of over 104,000 wine enthusiasts in no time. And what makes him stand out is how fresh and relatable his content is. His latest challenge to himself, mastering everything there is to know about Chenin Blanc. So I'm going to be putting him to the test. And if that's not enough, I'm also going to give him a quick fire round of labeling terms and see if he knows what Trocken, Feinherb, Vieux means. I mean, who doesn't love a good wine quiz? Oh, and as a reminder, if you remember my news last week, I've been nominated for the Wine Travel Awards in the Wine and Food Influencer category, the Expert Opinion section. So please do vote for me. The link is in the show notes, but it's super simple. You go to my profile and click the vote button. That's it. So it's winetravel-awards.com/nominee/Yanina-Doyle/. And a big thank you for those who have already voted. But now, a quick shout out to my sponsor of this episode, Grape Night. This is the ultimate way to bring the wine tasting experience into your own home. Their wine packages come with everything you need: wine facts, tasting notes, pairing suggestions, video guides, and even a curated Spotify playlist to set the mood. And behind it all is the incredibly inspiring, insanely hardworking, and very creative woman in wine, Jenny Davies, or as you will find her on Instagram at @thewinequeen_. Definitely give her a follow to see her journey planting her own micro vineyard in Sussex and sharing brilliant educational wine content. Jenny's story is actually amazing. She left behind her job in tech after working a harvest in Cape Town. She studied at Plumpton College to earn a master's in viticulture and enology, all whilst completing her WSET diploma and running in-person wine tastings. But she also knows that sometimes the best wine experience happens right at home, which is exactly why she created Grape Nights. So if you love the idea of learning about wine, but in a really fun, approachable, interactive way, you need to check out their latest release, the Spring Wine Trio. It's a seasonal celebration in 3 organic biodynamic wines. Loxarel Cora, this is a bright Spanish white. Judith Beck Pink, so a fresh, vibrant rosé, and Sebastian David's Le Libellou, a really juicy, crunchy red. Now, each bottle is crafted by passionate winemakers. They are committed to sustainability because supporting boutique organic producers is at the heart of Grape Nights. But if you're not after the full trio, no worries. You can buy each bottle individually, whether you want one thoughtfully chosen wine with all the tasting information or a surprise selection for a fun event or gift. Everything is beautifully wrapped. And there's even a monthly wine club if you want to make it a regular treat. So head over to grapenights.com or follow @grapenights on Instagram to keep up with their latest releases and ever-changing selections. Right, are you ready? Pour yourself that glass of Chenin Blanc. It is time to quiz Liam. Right, Liam, this is where we begin. But we are going to begin very, very easy with just simple questions like, do you remember when you first drank wine? I mean, when did you actually like wine?
Well, the first time I remember drinking wine wasn't the first time I liked wine because that was more of a scarring kind of time when I was, my mum and dad used to have a bottle of hock in the fridge.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So my first experience of wine wasn't the greatest. And my nan and granddad used to make homebrew strawberry and damson wine, which was disgusting.
Oh, I would assume that would be a very good adjective for that wine.
So it was a little bit potent, let's say. Interesting, and I didn't realize, but they used to have a wine club. So maybe like wine has been in my blood and I never realized it, because they used to have like a little village wine club, and that's why they used to make homebrew. So maybe unknowingly, I was just being indoctrinated into the world of wine at a young age. I wasn't getting drunk or anything, but anyway, we digress. So the first time I remember drinking wine, I think the time that I remember thinking, oh, that's nice, was when I started working in restaurants, and I used to, serve tables, and we had a really good front of house manager that used to really care about his wine lists. And this was like back in, when would it have been? Early noughties kind of like time, like 2001, 2002. And it was the first time I met someone really passionate about wine, and he gave me a Rioja and at the time a buttery Chardonnay to try. And I thought, oh, I really like this. The flavors are really interesting, and kind of like the drying of the mouth with the Rioja and then the intensity of the buttery Chard. That's what I remember. It didn't set me off like on a mad journey from there on in though, but I do remember that as being a time of thinking, I like wine.
Love it. Right now, many people are going to say, who is Liam? Who is the Wine Wally? So I want to know 3 things about you that maybe I don't even know, or people who maybe are following you on Instagram have no idea about. Surprise us.
Well, first of all, I'm a dad of 2. I'm married, so that's kind of like my day to day. I have a business outside of my blog where my wife and I run it together, and we work in the recruitment industry. So completely unrelated to wine. I'm not somebody that spends my life in the industry. In terms of weird things that you might not know about me, well, I was once a qualified personal trainer and very into sport at one point, and was ranked 7th in England as a hammer thrower, believe it or not.
What? These are cool facts. I love that. Okay. Don't mess with you.
No. So I used to be, I used to kind of like be really into athletics when I was younger, and threw the hammer and went to the English schools and got ranked 7th in England. So that was like my old life. And then you might not know this, but I was once headline news when I lived in London in the Evening Standard for my scones. I used to be a bit of a baker.
Oh, scones. So not scones.
Scones. Yeah, scones, not scones. So basically I used to have a scone baking street food stall with an ex-girlfriend, and we made the headlines in the Evening Standard, and then off the back of that we ended up writing and publishing a book and beating Fortnum and Mason's to the #1 scone in the UK. So there you go.
No way. Okay, Liam, I actually need you to stop, because already you're just showing that you're this crazy, insane, amazing entrepreneur. And apparently anything you turn your hat to, you can do. So obviously, whilst working in the beauty industry, doing recruitment and something that's entirely unrelated to wine, you are literally absolutely winning at this whole learning, talking, sharing, communicating about wine, which is amazing. So how did you actually decide to just start doing this online?
Where it stemmed from in regards to like starting the blog was, there was a time where I was getting more into wine, and me and a few friends, I think we would challenge ourselves to try and find budget bottles in the supermarket, which is still something I do today. I still enjoy that. I think it's good fun. What happened is you'd find a wine that you'd like, I'd spend a little bit more, but I wasn't necessarily kind of like getting a return all the time on me spending money. And that made me start to question, why am I spending this money on this wine? Maybe I should do a little bit more homework to work out what I'm getting. And so I just basically started making notes. I bought my first wine book. I bought the Wine Folly and started looking at the Wine Folly, started getting some basics around like what I should be looking for in terms of like regions to look for on the label, or countries that I might like, and understanding the difference between cool climate and warm climate, and, trying to make my decision in the supermarket or a wine shop a little bit more pinpointed. And it started to get a little bit better. And so then I went to Instagram because I was looking for people to learn from and looking for blogs that I might be able to kind of like soak up a bit more information. And then I found that there wasn't really anything like that on there. But this was a time, you got to remember this. I know it doesn't sound that long ago, but 4 and a bit years ago, there was no reels, videos. It was still very much pictures. It was the old school kind of Insta. TikTok didn't exist. But all I would see when I searched for wine were just pictures of very fancy bottles of wine that I really had no idea. They had no meaning to me. Lots of beautiful tasting notes and descriptions and histories around the wines, which are interesting. But as a beginner, you're looking for probably a little bit more simplification, a little bit more of a point in the right direction for things to try to get you to that point where you are a bit more excited about maybe a producer or the detail of the tasting notes. So I just decided to blog my journey online and just be like, maybe I could start a beginner's wine blog. It sounds a bit weird. Why would anyone listen to someone that doesn't know anything about wine?
Because it's relatable.
Hopefully, yeah. And I think that's where I've always tried to stay at. Even though I'm learning obviously more now and know more, I'm still trying to think about what would I want to see from somebody if I was just starting out learning about wine. So I'm not trying to tell everybody everything that I know all the time. I think sometimes it's just helpful to give people the little bit of information that you need to make a choice, one choice at a time in a supermarket. And so that's kind of where it stemmed from. And what I used to do was just blog my experiments and my interests. So whether I was doing bottle battles and trying a cheap versus an expensive bottle, trying 3 wines from 3 different areas of the world or whatever it might be, and just basically reporting back what I'd found. And that's basically where it started.
I have to say, I think that is an absolute amazing tip. I know I don't know if that is a tip, but doing a blind tasting, especially if they can copy you by wearing pink bunny eye masks, yes. I think that probably does help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Just to confirm.
Yeah.
But if you say, let's get a Cabernet Sauvignon from South Africa at £6 and let's get another one at 15, 20 and get somebody to serve them to you blind, that's when you can really start understanding. It's not about black currant or cloves or spice. It's about the texture in your mouth, the length, how long does that fruit stay on your palate? And all of a sudden, even if you haven't got the terminology, because I think actually it's important for people to not get stressed about that too much, just being able to say, okay, wow, I noticed the quality of this one versus that one, then you can start going down a different path of trying to identify what it is, in fact, that you can taste, right?
Yeah, 100%. And genuinely, even still today, when I go to, now obviously I get invited to go to tastings and to try wine, and my primary focus when I'm tasting wines actually isn't trying to pick out all the different tasting notes. That's kind of I might notice some familiar flavors that I recognize or that strike a chord with me, but actually I've got my own little way of assessing a wine that is important to me, that I try and think about when I try wine, that's what stands out and makes me want to recommend something.
Okay, what is that? Yeah.
I have these 3 things, which is price perception. So what the wine costs versus how I feel like it perceives or delivers to me. So that's the things that you talk about, the concentration, the length, the flavors, how much it stands out. So that's kind of like that. Flavors obviously is it delivering flavor to me in terms of can I taste fruit? Can I know different textures, different kind of nuances in the wine, but not necessarily tasting notes, but is it full of flavor? Has it got lots of flavor to it? And the other one is surprise. So does it make me feel something different? When I taste that wine, because what I found is when you taste wine, obviously you come to realize that you're tasting a lot of the same wines all over and over again, lots of Syrahs or lots of Merlots or lots of Chardonnays. So it's when you taste one, does it surprise you? Does it give you a different feeling that you've not had before? Make you disappointed? Does it kind of not resonate with you? So yeah, I think perception of price, is it delivering? The flavors, is it full of flavor? Is it giving me something interesting to taste? And surprise, does it make me feel something different, basically?
Yeah, no, honestly, I think when it comes to wine tasting, actually, the emotion part is something that we in the trade often forget how important it really, really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so, right. You've been testing your palate, tasting wines from around the world. So wine confession time. Tell us, if you're ready, your most embarrassing wine moment. Let people in. Be vulnerable, Liam.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I do remember actually, I don't know why, I don't know who told me and why I thought it, but I remember trying to tell a lot of people this fact and then obviously realizing later on that it was not true in the slightest. Is that champagne gets its bubbles from dust in the glass. And I don't know why I got told that.
Okay. No. There is some...
Can you help me understand why that might have been in my head? Because I don't know why.
Yes, because to do with the cleanliness of glass. Now, it's all about the science and how the bubbles can like bounce off. So actually, I think, God, now I'm being tested. So in terms of how the bubbles present, obviously dust does not create the bubbles. Yeah. But if you've got a completely clean glass, it's less places for CO2 to gather. So bubbles, they form slower, and then there's like this slower release of bubbles.
Yes, it's so they don't like cluster on the glass, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Basically, a dirty glass has more nucleation sites. I mean, don't ask me the science here, but the bubble wants a starting point, and so a dusty glass means bubbles form easier, but also like larger and faster. So for everyone listening, bubbles are created from trapped CO2 that was a byproduct of fermentation, dissolving back into the wine. That is how bubbles are created, not from dust. I love that. No, listen, it's part of your story. Yeah,
there we go. So that's what, and I think I've held that fact for quite a few years as well, to be fair. So.
And you're letting it out. How does it feel to just be free of that now? To thousands and thousands of people.
I do feel better, actually. Yeah, I feel...
A bit of therapy.
Bit of therapy, man. That's it, yeah.
Oh, welcome. Yeah. Okay, what is the weirdest wine pairing that you ever had?
It's actually a recent one, to be fair. And it was, I went to a Argentinian wine and food pairing night, which was paired with like loads of smoke, like Texas barbecue style foods and stuff. But the final course was a sticky toffee pudding paired with a sparkling sweet Argentinian Viognier. And it was really interesting because I tried the wine, I tried the sparkling Viognier first. And if I'm honest, it was a little bit too much. It was quite sweet for me.
Really opulent. So we actually are talking about the sweetness rather than the Viognier flavors of kind of that kind of really peachy, orangey.
Yes. So like Asti style sparkling, it was like that kind of level of sweetness.
Okay, so soft, sweet, fruity, peachy, orangey. However, Viognier doesn't tend to have that much acidity. So it's interesting that they made a sparkling from it. But I can see how that goes so well with a sticky toffee pudding, because sticky toffee pudding is so intense and dense and gooey. So to have that, and obviously quite clearly the sparkling wine still had some pretty good acid, because that's part of the major structure of sparkling wine. So cleansing your palate, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like what they were saying is they do all the techniques that they can to preserve the freshness and the acidity. So the high altitude Viognier grapes, they harvest the grapes at nighttime, yada, yada, all those kind of like things that people do. And so actually when you tried the sparkling and the sticky toffee together, actually what you were left with was quite a refreshing acidity that came through from the wine, because kind of like the sugar just cancelled each other out. And actually it refreshed your mouth after quite a heavy dessert. So yeah, it's quite good.
Okay, good. But to be honest, for everyone listening as well, really, when it comes to sugary like desserts, realistic, there are some still wines that people try and pair, like Malbec is notoriously known because it has these lovely floral notes that actually go quite well with certain chocolates, picking out the chocolates with violets in it, blah, 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 blah. But really, if you've got a sweet dessert, you really need a wine that is as sweet as, because otherwise it just makes the wine go flat. It just overtakes it. So, okay, sweet, sparkling Viognier.
Sorry for jumping in, but why is that then? Is it because the sweetness kind of just is supposed to...
Whatever is the most intense flavour. If you've got a wine that doesn't have the sweetness, it just overtakes it, and you're going to be actually left potentially tasting something that seems bitter, or it just disappears, because you've still got such a strong flavour from the sweetness. So a classic rule in wine pairing, the wine should always be at least as sweet, if not sweeter, than the dessert. Like for like. typically when it comes to pairings. Yeah.
Like that. That's good.
Right, Liam, you knew this was going to come. We've had enough chit chat now. I think it's time to get serious. So do your palate stretches. It's time to start questioning you on what you know about Chenin Blanc. Do you know what? I actually think your cheeks just went a little bit redder.
Oh, feel stressed.
No, you know what? We're going to take this slowly and we're going to just see. We're going to see what happens. So let's start with flavors first. If somebody's never tried Chenin Blanc, I think I'm going to leave this one to you. Talk to me about what you think that you would find in a glass of Chenin.
What style of Chenin?
Chenin Blanc is the great variety of versatility. There's dry all the way up to sweet. We can talk about, we'll look at maybe some labeling terms in a minute. Then it can be oaked, it might be unoaked, and bit of fizz with the bubbles, not created by dust. Sparkling wine.
Undusted sparkling Chenin.
And yes, with the sweet wine, you can have it with noble rot or without noble rot. But we'll get onto the sweets in a second. So yes, you can have all different styles. Let's focus on dry. What are you expecting from a dry Chenin Blanc?
So you're expecting very high acidity.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for fruit flavors like golden apple, pear, honey, and sometimes a little bit of wool on the nose.
Yeah.
Wet wool. Is that right?
Yeah.
Lanolin or something like that?
Yeah, something like lanolin, wool, straw, hay. Hay actually is something that I can sometimes get. It's like a cereal edge.
Yes.
Something cereally. You know, like granola-y, but not too granola-y. A little granola-y.
Yeah, so like it's kind of like orchard fruits, like ripe orchard fruits, like golden apple, pear, some florals as well, like jasmine, white flowery, kind of like florals.
Acacia.
Oh, that's a good one. And then, a little bit of honey as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's that honeysuckle that often is an indicator. There's one other aroma that I often identify with Chenin and actually can really help you in a blind tasting between Chardonnay and Chenin, because there are actually very many similarities between the two, and that's quince.
Yes.
So quince as a aroma, sometimes if you can pick it out, it's not always there as prominent and depends on the region, and maybe we'll talk about regions, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that honey, beeswax. I love Chenin. Are you going to admit to everyone listening that the reason you decided to study Chenin was because you're not that much of a fan?
Well, at the time, I wasn't a fan. Yeah.
Has it changed?
It might. I might be on the change. Yeah. I'm actually, and this is why I love doing one grape at a time, because it totally changes my mind all the time. And I, get really into a grape. And then what I notice is that the wines that I recommend the most are always the ones that I've done this one grape at a time thing on, because you get to know them intimately. You start to get some like little nuances and understand how to appreciate them. So this goes back to my thing with like shopping in a wine shop, is like, there's so many choices to be made. But if you can just find someone that can put you onto a really game-changing bottle of wine, or area or place to try from, that can make such a big difference. And I found that already doing Chenin. I found a little place, well, it's not that little, it's obviously quite obvious to you, but that I'd never had a wine from before. And you're like, oh yeah, the styles of the wines from here are like really cool. I'm really into that.
I love that. Honestly, that's another thing. We talked about the blind tasting of an entry level versus something super premium, but then you can really also just line up 4 different versions or the same grape from different regions, and really that you are bound to, unless it is a real style that you absolutely hate, you can really start identifying actually certain characteristics that you like, and maybe you've decided to strike off a variety that actually, unfairly so, actually you can quite enjoy given a little bit more time. Okay, so we talked about flavors and you were like, yeah, but what style? Well, okay, if we were talking about a grape variety that was perhaps late harvested, so left on the vines for longer, or if the Chenin Blanc was in a warmer climate, how do you think does that change the flavors of Chenin Blanc?
So for example, if it comes from a warmer climate like South Africa, the fruit flavors would change and become more like tropical fruit. So like more pineapple, guava, melon. So the wine's more like, and I love this word because obviously it's very winey, but more fruit forward, like hits you with a big whack of fruit at the beginning. They have less kind of more nuanced and kind of like gentle, whereas like some of them, not all South African Chenins, obviously, but they are definitely more fruit forward, the more riper styles. That flavour would come through more. And then if it was a late harvest one, you're getting more like toastiness in there as well. So kind of like toasted nuts or caramels, or I don't really know how to describe it that well, but they kind of got more of that kind of like spicy vanilla-y. Maybe the spicy vanilla is not right, but
it's just, yeah, absolutely.
I always imagine toastiness to them is how I would describe it, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. Generally, if it's basically been late harvest, it's been left on the vine for longer, the sugars have accumulated. So often you just get slightly higher alcohols, richer flavors, more pronounced flavors. So you can go more to that kind of honey nuttiness. And that nuttiness and toastiness may also come from if the wine is aging for longer. A lot of these really, really high quality wines, if you leave them for X amount of years, they can age just beautifully. And that's when the fruit's going to get more dried peaches, dried tropical fruits. It may go that much more nutty, even going smoky. So anyway, it's beautiful. But we'll touch on a few more flavors so everyone knows what to expect. But actually, South Africa alone as well, I always expect, if I was blind tasting and I had a more tropical flavored Chenin, I would typically go, oh yeah, maybe this is South Africa rather than in France or a cooler climate. But actually, it would be fun to do a massive lineup of Chenin Blancs from all over South Africa, because actually they have a lot of mountains as well and a lot of altitude. So Cederberg is more than 1,000 meters altitude. So as you go up higher in altitude, it gets cooler. So they're fresher styles, So even South Africa, there's so many different micro terroirs, different soils and slight different climates within it that actually that's fascinating. And then Paarl, obviously, is a region that, I'm ruining all the questions. I'm already, I'm giving you some, but like Paarl is much warmer. If you want that richer, definitely more tropical. So, there's lots to explore just in South Africa alone, right?
Absolutely.
I can't tell you anymore because I'm going to ruin your quiz. Well, it's not really a quiz, your test. Okay, so, right. What I have not said specifically, what wine region within France is the spiritual home of Chenin Blanc?
The Loire Valley.
Ding, ding, ding. Do you know the difference between how much is planted of Chenin Blanc in the Loire Valley compared to South Africa?
I think South Africa has got double the amount of Chenin compared to the Loire Valley.
Yeah, pretty much. And by the way, I had to look up these figures when it comes to numbers. So there are 10,000 hectares in the Loire Valley. So that's about 25,000 acres. Whereas in South Africa now, there's 17,000 hectares, more or less. That's 40,000 acres. But actually, that's a lot less now than it was actually about 10, 20 years ago. There was a lot more in South Africa. So they've obviously pulled out quite a bit, but obviously it's still obviously their signature variety. And the majority, that's the country that obviously has more Chenin than anywhere else. But okay, fun fact moment. Do you know, if we talk about South Africa, Loire Valley, where is the third most planted place in the world? Is there somewhere else that actually, surprisingly, has some little focus on Chenin Blanc?
America.
Yeah, in California. I found that fascinating. In the 1900s, that used to be their number one grape variety.
Yeah, so because I also did a little bit of reading, and they used to make jug wine or table wine from Chenin. And then so that, like a bit like South Africa, it was a bulk out wine for just kind of like mass market.
Well, they used to make a lot of brandy actually in South Africa. They still do a lot of brandy, but but it wasn't treated, of course, with the respect. Whereas now I hear on the grapevine in California, a lot of the more boutique producers, smaller producers are really trying to focus on Chenin Blanc again and seeing it as a really beautiful variety to focus on premium wine.
Interestingly, I was really jammy to get to go to this wine tasting a couple of weeks ago. And luckily, I just started out on this Chenin journey. And it was wines of Washington and Oregon. So they're like the north of North America. And there was quite a lot of Chenin there. And it was a very similar style to like French Chenins, like dry style. So it's like really super crisp, really high acid, very clean, very fresh. So actually, when I tried a couple of that, I was like, oh, okay, this could be interesting, like for my Chenin journey. So yeah, that's some of the Chenins that I alluded to earlier on that I tried. And I was like, oh, that's surprised me actually that you would get that style of wine from there.
Fascinating. I haven't actually had any from Oregon and Washington. This is the wonderful joy. These grapes now travel all over the world. And, you know, it's so wonderful to actually see the expressions from different countries. So let's bring it back to Loire Valley, because Loire Valley is the classic. And also when we look at Loire Valley, the production, the regions, everything's defined a lot more. It's a little bit easier to, well, not necessarily to understand, but when you venture into it, it's written down more. There's information. So I would like you, ideally, to name me 3 key regions. Everybody, he's got his eyes closed like, oh my God, what's the next question? I would like you to name me 3 key regions in the Loire Valley that produces Chenin Blanc.
So a classic, Vouvray.
Perfect. Absolutely.
This is my terrible pronunciation, by the way, so please correct me.
It won't be much better than me.
I don't know, mate. Mine's going to be quite... Savennières.
Savennières, yeah.
Only does dry Chenin. 1
tick, big tick, yeah.
And Anjou.
Anjou, yeah. Heart of Chenin as well.
And then the only Grand Cru AOC in the Loire Valley, Quartz de Lyon, is it?
Okay, Quartz de Champ.
Quartz de Champ.
So, okay.
Did I get that right or not?
We will pause on that because that is a sweet wine region, and we'll come to sweet wine in a second. But yes, a cru within Anjou. So remember that when I ask a few more questions. Absolutely. So the other regions that actually there is Mont-Louis, which is just south of Vouvray. And actually has really, really similar soils. It doesn't quite have that kind of protected, sheltered, south-facing sites the same way that Vouvray has, but you can get some very, very good value. And then also there is actually another region that's kind of north of Tours that is not within just wrapping itself around the river like all the other regions that we've mentioned. It's much further north. And so people don't tend to know about it, but it's got like tremendous potential. And there's some really interesting wines coming out of there. And this is now my pronunciation, if I can actually pronounce it. Jeannière. Have you heard of it?
I have. I'm not going to pronounce it back to you because it will sound like Jeannière.
Well, it's because you don't pronounce the S's within there. Everybody, like, I'll write the regions in the show notes, but yeah, Jeannière. And so that is a place where sometimes you can get some really good value because it's not quite as known. So they are the kind of major regions. So we've touched on all of them. Now, you said about dry Chenin comes from Savennières. Yeah. How does that compare to Vouvray? Because these are the 2 considered most premium wine regions.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the 2?
Well, Vouvray does the spectrum from like dry to sweet to sparkling to off dry. And yeah, I had an off dry Vouvray the other week, actually. That was my first one that I'd ever tried.
I think I commented, I saw you, having the off dry.
I don't mind off dry wines. I don't know. And I'm still open. So like I can have my mind changed on it because I'm pretty sure, it was just an entry level, bottle from a supermarket. So I'm sure there are lots of other ones out there that will change my mind. But that particular one, it was nice, but it was not my style of wine that I would personally go for. But having said that, I think there's an interesting thing with wine where paired with the right food, that wine is probably amazing and would fit really nicely together. And I'd probably think it was really good. So I'm not closing myself off from it. It's just that when you're trying 2 wines back to back, I was like, that doesn't hit the same as that one, for example.
Absolutely. If you're having a dish of food that is riper, that actually, and also has if you think when you're cooking, when you cook and make a pad thai and you make it from scratch and you follow the recipe and you're adding in so much sugar and you're like, oh, that's why I love pad thai so much. It's so sweet, for a savory dish. And that's why, like, for instance, Riesling is like number 1. But this is where actually an off-dry Vouvray can also be really, really wonderful with a dish like that, and anything that also has a bit of spice. And if you're going down that Indian route and you having a kind of, I don't know, butter chicken, something creamy, and it's quite intense in flavor, that off dry, the acidity is going to cut through all the creaminess, and it often has like a bit of a coconutty base. A lot of these like Indian dishes, so actually it feels a bit sweeter. So an off-dry Vouvray can be really, really wonderful. But on its own, if it's a stylistic thing, then, you're not having necessarily the benefit. The off-dry part is not necessarily benefiting you if you don't like a slightly sweeter style.
Yeah. But that's just linking into, though, that's what is quite interesting, though, that finding that style of wine now, I think, is a nice wine to be able to recommend to people if people like a sweeter white wine. So obviously a lot of people have sweet palates when it comes to certain, wines, red or white. And so, rather than maybe recommending them like, maybe they drink like a classic supermarket brand like Barefoot or something like that, and they want to get off it, but they don't know where to go. An off-dry Vouvray would be a very classy recommendation to give somebody because it's well thought out, it's a nice region, the wines are probably quite well made, and so it would give them a chance to kind of like level up their wine experience without having to just buy another brand that's kind of off the shelf.
So now there is actually an unofficial off-dry category. So whereas the official categories is sec, which is dry, demi-sec, which is medium dry, but so has a nice bit of sweetness, and then Mouliot, as you said, which is pretty sweet. There is actually an off-dry category, which is kind of not as official. Do you know what it might say on the label? Sec tendre.
Ah, okay.
Tendre, sec tendre. And sometimes it might just, I think I've seen it say just tendre, but actually that can be super useful if you're hunting, especially online when you've got more access.
What does tendre mean?
Oh, tender.
Tender.
Yeah. So it's a tender dry.
Sweet tender wine.
No, because sec means dry. So sec tendre is dry tender. There you go. Okay, there we go. So you've got that spectrum in Vouvray. Obviously, the sweeter it is, you're going to have richer characters and more mouthfeel, and of course, sugar level. But do you feel like you understand the difference between, for instance, actually a dry Vouvray and a dry Savennières? Why you might go for one rather than the other?
My gut feeling is to do with the soils.
Well, they can definitely make a difference. Yeah, 100%. Do you know the difference?
This is the difference between reading something and trying to say it out loud, isn't it? And like you suddenly just feel so...
Oh, honestly, listen, I feel you. The amount of prep work as well to have to try and pronounce some of these French terms or whatever. And anyway.
I can't quite remember, but it's something to do with one has got like more like schist, is it?
Oh, yes.
Limestoney soils.
Oh, now you're mixing.
Oh, no, sorry. One's got limestone and the other one's got schist. So schist is the one that is it more rocky? Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And volcanic as well, just to add in, a bit schisty and volcanic.
So this is me trying to sound like I know what I'm going on about, but just saying things that I'm literally in my head that I remember. One of them forces the roots lower down. Maybe the limestone one, because the water is lower, and so the roots have to search for the water, if that makes sense.
Well, limestone, which basically, so in Vouvray, it's a famous tuffeau soil. So again, these are like 90 million year old soils when the area used to be a seabed, which is just mind-blowing. But basically it's a type of kind of limestone, and it has a lot of minerality to it, and it can allow the water to really go down deep. So the roots often definitely go down to try and search for that water. Actually, those same soils, they're in Saumur, which is another region which we actually didn't touch on, but that's more famous for the sparkling wines. But then sparkling wines are very often, there's like 11 permitted varieties within like Cremant de Loire, and most of it gets made in Saumur, and Chenin Blanc is the number one variety. So, Chenin Blanc is really big there. They've got all those special caves underneath the ground that they've carved into this incredible soft white tuffeau soils. But the idea as well is that typically in Savennières, with this kind of schist and volcanic soils, you tend to get kind of even more like, you get more maybe saltiness, salinity, minerality. You can even go more of that kind of herbal, even towards the slightly a smokier, savory edge. They say the wines of Savennières have tension, which is a really, really difficult thing to describe. It's the type of the texture, the way it feels in your mouth there. It's maybe a little bit more linear, directional. It has tension. Whereas I tell you what, that's your challenge, to investigate tension and explain it to everybody in a way that actually is approachable. There's your homework. And then
I know how I described that already. Yeah.
Okay for it.
Yeah. No,
right.
Well, it was like walking a tightrope, wasn't it? The wine had tension.
Okay, all right. Walking a tightrope in your mouth. There you go. But yeah, okay, I like it. Very approachable. Whereas then with the tuffo soils in Vouvray, typically maybe the wine is just a little bit more fruit forward, as you like to say. But again, a little bit rounder, maybe a little bit more mouthfeel. But the power, I mean, again, it really does depend on where you're growing your Chenin, because you've got amazing slopes in like specific sites in Vouvray. Like Huet is a producer that makes amazing wines, and depending on certain specific soils that he has can absolutely completely change how the wine tastes. So that's, again, you could go crazy on just one region specifically. Also, biodynamics in Savennières is like massive, big over there. And Nicolas Joly is the famous guy who's like the godfather of biodynamics. So there's that as well.
I don't have a Savennières Chenin yet in my little stash that I've got. So I think I need to definitely get one.
Yeah, well, okay. So not only do people know about Savennières, but actually within Savennières, there are two specific regions. I'm not sure whether, like, there's two AOCs within it. Would you like me to tell you what they are for you to investigate on your journey?
Yes, because if I'm honest, I don't know them.
So, no, oh my God, no. So we're talking tiny. I mean, already, now this is actually off the top of my head, Savennières is like 150 maybe hectares compared to like, okay, actually a lot more. I think 2,000. There's a lot more in Vouvray than there is in Savennières. And then these two AOCs are really tiny. So you've got Coulet de Serin, and that is literally owned 100% by Nicolas Joly. So it's called Coulet de Serin. And then there's another one, which is, there's about 9 producers that are producing within it. And it's called Roche Aumane. So there are these two. So that's where you tend to get like the finest quality of dry Savennières. So there's still so much to investigate within them.
This is why I find wine so interesting, because you peel back a layer and you're like, oh, brilliant. You know, I've got a little bit of knowledge. I can use that. And it does help. Then somebody peels another layer back and then another. And then before you know it, you're like confined to one specific plot in a vineyard, you know, one vineyard with a certain type of soil, with a certain winemaker. And it's like, that wine's going to taste different to that. And it will change your mind on things. So yeah, that's why I find it interesting. You know, I think it's fascinating, that type of, you know, minute detail that can make such a big difference, and why it's impossible. Like when someone says, I hate Chenin, for example, you know, you can't say that, because you just haven't found that right one, which I obviously know deep down, but that's why it's fun to do, because it's nice to prove yourself wrong and give yourself reason to kind of like, you know, go out and explore something that typically I always swerve it on the shelf. But obviously now I'm beginning to realize that I don't need to. I just need to know where to look.
And also just to know the regions. I mean, again, most of us don't have the money. Huet, H-U-E-T, is like the top producer of one of the top producers of Vouvray. But he has like, I told you, those best sites. So you can look for he has Les Hautes Lieux, like literally on the label. He has another one called Le Mont and Clos de Bourg. And these like 3 incredible sites, as far as I'm concerned, like the best sites of Vouvray. I used to sell them as a sommelier. We had all of them. Only one time did I ever get to taste them together. And it was incredible. Same producer, but like, and though, just to confuse you and just to make life even harder, those exact same sites, depending on the vintage, might have a different sweetness level. And in fact, do you know why there is all the different sweetness levels in Vouvray as a general rule?
Probably to do with the weather, the change in climate.
Yes! Ding, ding, ding.
Because it's quite unpredictable.
Totally, yes. So this is where the Atlantic meets kind of the continental, and it just creates a mess. Well, it just means that everything is just from year to year. And when storms come and how it works out, it really is. There are years when the grapes are not going to ripen very, very well. And there are years when they're amazing. And so actually then they can play around with, okay, actually, you know what, we can only do dry. Oh, actually, we can do more, and so on. And obviously, and then it depends on site specific as well. So yeah, year on year out, vintage variation is a massive, massive thing. And therefore what the producer decides to do with the wines. It's a whole other kettle of fish when you just think it's not even just about the grape.
Yeah, I'd never kind of put that two and two together, if that makes sense, until you positioned it like that. But now I get it. And I guess why sweet wines are harder to come by and more expensive as well, because like you can maybe only make them in certain years, certain vintages.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
So, okay, let's finish off on the major flavors or styles of wine with noble rot, right? So noble rot is known as Botrytis cinerea. Coteaux de Léon is the kind of famous place within Anjou that produces sweet wine. Within Coteaux de Léon, there are crus within it. And you mentioned the first official Grand Cru in Loire is...
Quartz.
Yes.
Quartz de Chaume.
Boom. Yeah, Quartz de Chaume. Yeah. So that was actually the first official Grand Cru in the Loire Valley. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question then? So Grand Cru in the Loire Valley, is it the area or the vineyard or...
It's a superior site.
So site, because like it changes, doesn't it, from depending on like where you are in France? Can it mean different things? It can mean either the vineyard or the producer or the chateau or something like that. So it's like...
Yes. Whereas in terms of, for instance, like Burgundy and the Loire, yes, very much. When they say Grand Cru, they are talking about site specific. So many producers, it depends on where it is. It could be tiny and it could be a monopole and only one producer makes from that Grand Cru. Clos de Tarte in Burgundy is known as a monopole that comes to mind. So no one else can have it, but they own that site and it's defined as because of the specific site. But many producers can, if they own parts of that plot. Again, if you go to Chablis, there are the 7 basically Grand Crus, and then around it, slightly lesser site. There's actually don't know how many, but there's several. There's more Premier Crus, so they're good sites, but not quite as good as the Grand Cru. Yeah.
So that one that I've got then
is not no.
That's not a Grand Cru. That's just from.
That is not. It's from the region Coteaux de Léon. And then within Coteaux de Léon, there are these much, much smaller crus established for their quality because of their own specific microclimate. So you've got Quartz de Chaume, you've also got Chaume, and then you've got Bonnezeau. And these are sweet wines that are affected by the river Léon that runs through. They have, so in the morning, like the river can create this morning mist. And then autumn sunshine in the afternoon comes, dries everything up, warms everything up. So the mist basically starts this process of Botrytis cinerea, which is basically where it pierces little holes. And so the grape can start shriveling. But without the sunshine, it would basically just be grey rot and it would rot. But the sunshine dries it. So then actually it just shrivels the grapes in this lovely, beautiful way that's then going to give you more of that honey, more of that kind of smoke and spice, which is really, really interesting. Okay, slowly come to the end of your test. I think you've had enough suffering. Going across to South Africa, because we haven't really talked about regions. I did mention Paarl already to make your life easier. Nice warm site. Do you want to name any other wine sub-regions within South Africa that people might want to look at for Chenin Blanc, good quality Chenin?
So this is the one that I found the other day that I really liked. And I've had it in my head the whole time we've been talking and it has just literally run out. It's Swartland.
Swartland, yes.
Swartland, yes.
Totally, yeah.
So like I've had a couple from there now and really feeling that kind of style. Well, I've had 2 interesting styles, like an old vine style and quite a fresh style as well. But yeah, like so it was the one that I tried first. The ones that I've tried, was the Honey Drop by Journey's End, I think it is. And I'll be honest, when I read it, it sounded quite intense. But when I tried it, it was really crisp and really light. And so it reminded me of like a Burgundy Chardonnay. That's how I would describe it. Like kind of like had like that oakiness, but had lots of freshness to it at the same time. So yeah, it was really, really enjoyed it. It reminded me of the Chardonnays that I like. And that's why I suddenly was like, oh, actually, I quite like Chenin Blanc, to be fair.
Well, Journey's End does make amazing Chardonnays as well. So I think they're pretty skilled. Yeah, Chardonnay is Cabernet Sauvignon.
So basically, the Chenins that I've tried from Swartland so far have really surprised me and really made me step back a little bit and be like, oh, actually, these are clean, they're crisp, they've got depth to them, they're dry, but they've got interesting flavors in them. You know, this one it reminded me of buttery Chardonnays that I liked. And I can understand when you talk about people confusing Chardonnay and Chenin together. I can get that, because had I closed my eyes and not known what was in the bottle, I probably would have said that that's what that was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Fully understand. So I love Swartland as a region for Chenin Blanc because, as you mentioned, they have loads of old vines, bush vines, and in South Africa, they specifically define as long as a vine is over 35 years. They've got an old vine project, actually. So if people want to investigate the old vine project, and they can see the producers doing things with amazing bush vines. So Swartland's a great place. And Stellenbosch actually has fantastic Chenin as well. So since you've done your journey, is there any South African producers that have really shone for you?
The problem that I've got is I've still got quite a few to try. So I've got, you've mentioned one already, the De Morgan's on.
Oh, divine. Their top wine that's about £30 a bottle is just amazing.
And I don't know if this rumor is true, but because when I put a picture up the other day, a few people messaged me, but do they play classical music to the grapes?
Yeah, they may do. I don't know if they do specifically, but many wineries will do that. And the idea is the sound waves can affect wine. So yes, that is definitely a thing in wineries. I can't tell you about De Morganson. Have you tried any Ken Forester yet?
No, that is also on my hit list. Yeah. Yes. So the FMC Chenin, isn't it?
Effin Magical Chenin. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Is that what it stands for?
It's Effin Magical Chenin or Effin Marvelous Chenin. But basically, yes. I mean, come on. If you're naming it like that, it deserves to be drunk. But yeah, Ken Forester's a pretty good one to go and try. That
is the other one that I've got on my hit list. And then I've just got a little selection to try that I've a couple of others, but I've yet to really delve properly into it. I've only had like a couple so far. But yeah, so far the ones from Swartland have been the ones that have been turning me.
If you're going to go on your journey in South Africa, Swartland's a great place to start. Right, test over.
How did I do?
I'm going to give you, should have counted, I'm going to give you 75%. That's a merit.
I'll take that.
But before we go, you know that you have to suffer that little bit more. We are going to go to a quick fire round.
Okay.
Rapid fire challenge on labeling terms. I am going to set the timer. I'm going to give you
Chenin labeling terms or just any labeling terms?
Any labeling terms.
Oh, okay.
How many minutes do you want to suffer?
You go for it. I've not been put on the spot before, so it'd be good to just see how much I can crumble or stick it out. So let's just do it.
We are going to do 3 minutes of suffering. Are you ready?
Let's go for it.
Okay. What does AOP stand for on a French wine label?
Like a protected area.
Yes, that'll go. Appellation d'origine protégée. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. In Italy, what is the highest classification for quality wine? Is it DOC, IGT, or DOCG?
DOCG.
Perfect. Stands for Denominazione. Oh my God, I can't do it fast. Stands for Denominazione di Origine Controllata e Garantita. What does Vieille Vin mean on a French label?
Vieille Vin. Oh, God. Table wine.
It means old vines. Okay. Grape varieties. What grape is used in white Burgundy?
Chardonnay.
What grape is used in Barolo?
Nebbiolo.
What's the grape used in Sancerre?
Sauvignon Blanc.
What's the grape used in Chianti?
Sangiovese.
Yes. Okay. If you see Trocken on a German wine, what does it mean?
Dry.
What about Herb Trocken?
Off dry.
What about Feinherb?
Ooh, medium dry. It's like half dry.
Off dry. Boom. Yes. What about if you see GG on a German wine label standing for Gross Gewatch? What does it mean?
Oh, gross Gewatch. Big, large batch, harvest.
Basically a top dry wine. It's basically part of the VDP classification, top for the best vineyards. But you're going to get a dry. It guarantees dry and high quality. Okay, in Spain, when we're talking about aging terms, if there has been a wine that has aged for at least 2 years, but 1 year in oak, what will it say on the label?
Reserva.
Oh, Crianza. Oh, so close. Okay, champagne. champagne. What indicates that the wine is driest out of Brut, Extra Brut, or Demi-Sec?
Brut.
Extra Brut.
Oh.
Extra Brut is 0 to 6 grams residual sugar per litre. Okay, if it says extra dry, do you know how many grams of residual sugar per litre are in there?
0.01.
Extra dry is actually sweeter than Brut. It is 12 to 17 grams residual sugar per litre. Okay, I think we're getting right to the end. Okay, what does vendage tardive mean? Vendage tardive. This is basically on an Alsatian wine label.
Vendage tardive.
Spelt vendanges tardives.
It's not helping at all. Late harvest.
Boom!
Boom.
And there we go. And that is the timing done. Stop the clock, ladies and gentlemen. Man. I have no idea how many you got right, but that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe I got that Crianza one wrong, man. That's really annoyed me.
To be honest, Crianza Reserva, Gran Reserva can be, remember, it can be when we see Reserva on a label, it depends on which country it's in, what region it is. So, a Reserva and aging terms for a Barolo will be different to an Amarone, which will be different to a Chianti.
Thank you.
Just if you see Reserva, it means it's definitely been aged longer. And in fact, in the New World, Reserva means nothing at all. It means it's been aged longer than the wineries. Other wine as such. So at least in places like the old world, like Chianti and Amarone and Rioja, there are specific ages and time that it needs to spend in oak. So you can actually look that up, but New World, no. That was fun. It was good. Listen.
That was good.
The wonderful joy of wine. You will never, ever stop learning. And I don't stop learning. Every day is a school day. To finish off with, one tip for people who want to get into wine but feel intimidated.
Oh, yeah. I think for me, the thing that I think helps the most is when you want to change what you're buying or buy different wines, do one of two things, like buy a more expensive bottle of something that you really like to see if you can notice the difference and understand what it is about that bottle that makes it more expensive. So maybe there's words on the label that might give you a clue, or the producer, but definitely like upping your level of like spending just to try and test to see if you get a better experience. Or the other one that is a personal favorite is trying to find a grape that is similar, so a style of wine that's similar to what you already drink. So the best thing that you can actually do is actually go into a wine shop and just be like, I drink 19 Crimes, or I drink Malbec, or I drink whatever it is, and say like, can you recommend something to me that will offer me a different experience? And that's the one that I think always opens a nice door for people to kind of go and find something that they've never had before.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Liam.
No worries.
Let me know when you're doing your next grape variety and I'll be here to test you again.
100% I'm up for it.
Love it. Speak to you soon, Liam.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So, how was your knowledge on Chenin Blanc? How is your knowledge on sake? I'm asking as that is exactly what is coming up next week. Never before have I touched on sake. Is it a wine, a beer, a clear spirit? Maxim Kassir is the head sommelier at the Aubrey at the world-renowned luxury Mandarin Oriental, and he's also the ambassador for Drink Japan. And so he is the perfect human to guide us on a journey of Japan's most beloved national drink. But before we go, a wine quote from Ken Forrester, who we mentioned in this episode, a legendary figure in South African wine, often referred to as the king of Chenin Blanc. And he said, all the problems of the world on one hand and a glass of Chenin in the other. That's better. That rather perfectly captures the heart of this episode, that wine isn't just about technical details or tasting notes. It is about emotions, moments, memories, and sometimes simply finding joy in a glass of something special. So, whether you're deep into your WSET studies or just someone who loves discovering new bottles, I hope this episode brought a little inspiration and maybe even a reminder to pause, pour yourself a glass and savour the moment. And whilst doing so, remember, if you find a moment to leave a review and some stars or a rating, this will make the podcast more discoverable to fellow wine lovers like yourself. I will be truly grateful. So whilst you are sharing this podcast with a wine-loving friend, may I wish you all a wonderful, positive and happy week ahead. Until next Monday, wine friends, cheers to you.